Hey everyone, Callum here, event producer at Product Marketing Alliance. Product Marketing Summit is now a 17-city global series, and we've got the biggest one of the bunch coming to New York on March 13th and 14th. We've got an all-star lineup curated just for PMMs, featuring speakers from companies like Microsoft, TikTok, LinkedIn, and more across 3 whole tracks of content. We'd love to see you there, so all you need to do is head over to www.productmarketingalliance.com and find the summit under the events tab. And guess what? We're also giving listeners 20% off their tickets. Simply register now and use the code podcast20 in all capital letters to secure your seat at the summit. See you there.
Welcome everyone to the PMM Talk series. This is the second episode of the series, and I'm very excited to have Hattie the PMM with me today. If, like me, you're wondering, is that her last name? No, it's not. And we're going to get into it really quickly. So Hattie, welcome on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I would love to start by asking you for a sweet and short intro to our listeners. I know you as Hattie the PMM from LinkedIn, but I'm sure there's more to uncover there, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Hattie the PMM, founder of productmarketers.com, which is a supportive and encouraging community for product marketers to learn how to build your personal brand internally where you work and externally on LinkedIn. So that's sweet and short. There you go.
Thank you. That's perfect. And I think to start, we can talk about productmarketers.com and why you started the whole initiative. I think that's going to give us more of an intel on your drivers for being such a thought leadership voice for the product marketing community.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because a year ago, Senda, if you had told me I'd be doing this, I would be like, no way, dude. Because at the time, I was so happy in my full-time work as a PMM internally at a $150 million ARR firm in America. And being internal, I was just so happy up until tech layoffs started happening. And I was starting to see my very, very good friends getting laid off who were exceptional at their jobs. And it really scared me. Like the first round of layoffs, really I was shaking. I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And that was primarily because I was like, I need to secure myself because, I'm a single woman. I don't have rich parents. I live alone. So I was like, I need to make sure that I always have a salary, right? So at the time, I was like, okay, well, how do I secure myself? Make sure that I build myself internally and also make sure that the market knows who I am. So then if, God forbid, I was let go, that I wasn't going to be applying with hundreds of other PMMs on a job on LinkedIn, right? So I had to stand out. And that's when I started posting on LinkedIn. And this is why I built productmarketers.com, because I wish I had this community a year ago. I wish I had a supportive community that was like, here's what you do, here's what you don't do, here are all the lessons, the successes, the failures. And let's talk honest about what is happening right now and how do we secure ourselves as PMMs within tech specifically. So yeah, that's where it came out of, a lot of fear, a lot of me being absolutely scared. And I'd recognize a lot of other PMMs have tons of imposter syndrome. I feel like it's kind of rife within us. And I absolutely refuse to let any other PMM go through what I went through, which was absolutely being terrified. So yeah, that's why I was like, let me create a community, a really, really sweet community that PMMs can come to if they want.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we need. I mean, I've been a product marketer for the past 4 years, and it's definitely a small community. So having initiatives like yours are useful and helpful. And I'd love to dive deeper into the, behind the scenes. I've been listening to a few of your interventions as well in other podcasts and following you on LinkedIn. You have an interesting perspective on product I think it's a bit different from what we usually read and listen to. And I heard you say once that frameworks in product marketing are bullshit. So I want to know why you said that, and also what is your take in product marketing today?
Oh yeah, frameworks definitely are bullshit. And I feel like a lot of, when you Google product marketing, a lot of frameworks do come up and they act like they're the holy grail to product marketing. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, this is absolutely absurd. So when I hear like a new PMM is trying to break in and they find this absolute garbage on Google, I'm like, you should not even be downloading or consuming this crap. And what's funny is there was a Reddit thread all about, I think someone was asking, how do you break into your first 30 days as a PMM? What do you do in your first 30, 60, 90 days? And then people were sharing my YouTube videos on it, right? And then someone was like, oh, I hate frameworks, like frameworks are nonsense. And then someone literally answered back saying, hey, I'm a director of product marketing. I watched one of Hattie's videos. She said frameworks are absolutely bullshit. You should watch her videos because she knows what she's speaking about. And what they were discussing on this Reddit thread, which I love Reddit because look, you can be honest. You don't have your name attached. No one knows who you are. So I was like, oh my God, they're saying such nice things, was the fact that they were highlighting trying to replicate, trying to be a unicorn company through frameworks is like, you cannot do it. So for me, being a product marketer is more about having a consultative mindset, going into the role being like, okay, what is the lay of the land? Was it firstly the same as what I was told in the interview process, or is it different? And then being like, okay, well, what is happening? What are the problems? What are the successes? What are the things we can do more of? And then having a consultative approach to it. So product marketing is not one size fits all. I think it's absolute crap. If you see that online, just absolutely ignore it. I think that's kind of like, no, just too basic. It's just like idiotic. It's like, what do you think I am, an idiot? So yeah, I tend to have like spicy takes, but for some reason, everyone who's like director level and up, they're like, she gets it and we need more of this.
I think this is a perfect transition to talk about personal branding. I know you're very upfront and straightforward. Even when I met you at the PMA Summit, you're just like on stage, owning it. You know what you're doing. And I think it's very rare to find someone who, walks the talk. So it's a question I have for you around personal branding for PMMs, obviously. I know it's important. Can you tell us what are the strategies? Like, what are your secrets? What should we take away from you to learn how to build our personal brand on LinkedIn or other channels, whether it's YouTube, even Instagram, which I think is a bit underrated at the moment, but let's talk about personal branding.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing is, I feel like personal branding firstly has a positioning problem because whenever I say personal branding, people automatically think LinkedIn. And I think that's wrong, right? Yeah, it's kind of like, it's the known thing. And I think it's kind of wrong because when I first started to approach this was back when I was fully employed and I started to see the layoffs happening. And what I had recognized was I had a micromanager for the first, I think, couple of years of my role. And what he did was he really, really ruined my confidence. He was basically micromanaging me to a point where I did not believe in myself. And also when other people were like, Hattie, that work was exceptional, and giving me shout outs, like the VP of product, the VP of engineering would give me shout outs on company update meetings. He would slack me and be like, I don't think it was that good. I think we can like improve it some more. And I'm like, what is happening right now? So I recognized was my internal personal brand where I was working was completely incongruent with who I actually was. So what I recognized was I needed to fix this as soon as possible. So when he was no longer my manager, I was like free, like the weight was off my shoulders. And I started to think, okay, well, what do I need to repair internally where I work? So then when a round of layoffs happen, people don't automatically think, oh, she's crap because of what that manager said. No, I absolutely refused to be allowed to be like branded by this dude who knew nothing about me. So then I was like, okay, let me do a PMM roadshow internally. Let me get on company update meetings. Let me explain what product marketing is, but also who I am, what I do, and how you can help me. So I was doing the one-to-ones sender. I was like really going out there. I was really making sure that I was known within my company. Then secondly, I was like, okay, now if the company does let me go, how do I make sure that my LinkedIn is so up to date and it's so like bam, bam, bam with value that people are like, oh, we actually recognize that she knows her stuff and she is hireable at any moment of the year. And therefore, I started to couple it up with posting on LinkedIn, very personal posts around what my learnings were on product marketing, where I failed, what were my successes, what my hot takes were. I was just like, here is me in a nutshell, completely authentically me. And what I was able to do through that was people internally, especially the executives, were reading my LinkedIn posts and be like, oh my gosh, she's actually really switched on. Like, this is what she was doing on this project. Huh? That was her rationale. That was her context. Because here's the thing. We all have Slack, right? When we work internally, we're not going to be posting on Slack and explaining our thought process or explaining this and that about us. We're not going to be doing that because obviously who wants a bragger internally? No. But here's the thing. I was like, let me couple that up with my LinkedIn to then boost my personal brand internally. And by pure chance, like I was starting to amass a following just because I was sharing really, really interesting takes on product marketing. But my main goal was from LinkedIn, I wanted to attract recruiters just in case I was let go. So I wanted recruiters to always be in my DMs. But equally, I was working on making my situation at work better. So I was seen as a linchpin. So to the point where I quit my job, I had gone through 5 rounds of layoffs and I was still there. And I'm pretty 100, like I'm 99% certain if I didn't quit, I would still be there. There'd still be more layoffs, but I'd still be there. Because I had cemented myself with not only the people I worked with, but the executives and the private equity firm who are involved as well. So personal branding, sometimes people think, oh, it's LinkedIn, it's Instagram, it's TikTok. How do you do this? What are the posts? What are the strategy? And I'm like, let's take it back to basics, my friends, like my PMM friend. Let's think about what your goal is. Is your goal to stand out? Is your goal to always be known and therefore always hard?
Yeah. I think, what you said about repositioning, personal branding, it's important not to confuse it also with just overly posting on LinkedIn and being seen. I think there's a difference between someone who's, as you said, authentic and shares opinions, learnings, who brings back to the community rather than someone who's just shouting at you, like, these posts of, oh, if you're doing this, then you didn't understand anything about product marketing. I think that's very much a bit of a turnoff for me, at least. I'd rather be part of a community where I feel like I'm learning. Every time I see one of your posts, I'm like, okay, I learned something today, or I laugh, or, it's adding some form of value to my day. When you quit, how was that transition thanks to your personal brand? What did you take with you to showcase to the product marketing community and to then be able to start your own community today?
Yeah, so I'm very risk averse. Like, I really want to caveat that. Me quitting was a huge, huge move for me because I like my private medical care. I like having a, solid salary coming in every month. I live alone. I don't have rich parents. I have no one to rely on. I pay my own bills. So the only way that I could have done that was the fact that I had a wait list and I had an audience of other PMMs that I knew were really interested in joining my community. So for me, it was a case of, how did I create that? It was like monetizing the fact that I built an audience and I had taken the time, like you said, to not tell people, here's how you do product marketing and here's the right way and here's the wrong way. I was like, dude, here's how I do it. Feel free to debate with me. Tell me how you do it. Yeah, I was like, it's a dialogue, because I think here's where some people get it wrong. They perceive themselves in a completely different light online and differently to their in real life self. For me, I just see it as it's myself, but on scale, en masse. It's networking en masse. It's just a scalable version of me who's in real life, but online. And for me, I would say I like to think I'm a down-to-earth person. I don't typically believe in absolutes. I'm like, it depends and it's all cool. We just do things in different ways. And therefore, my content was always aligned around that. So when I started to think, okay, well, I really wanted to jump in and really back myself, I only did that because I felt secure that I had a solid audience who were interested. So the leap between like being employed and then quitting was huge for me. But I was so thankful that I really had a strong community of PMMs who were willing and interested in this topic and wanted a fresh new community to join, that maybe they had felt others feel a bit cold, or they feel others are just too big. Like there are communities online for PMMs that are like hundreds of thousands of members or whatever. And they're like, well, I feel like a tiny little person in a sea of like so many people. And here I'm like, hello, like I remember your name. I remember your kids' names, like, you know? So yeah, I feel like it's kind of a fresh breath of air. And also, I think what I've done by proxy is I give other PMMs permission to do whatever the heck they want. Because I'll be real, I think a lot of PMMs waited for permission or didn't feel like they could do it, especially with other organizations in our space who probably dominate the space, right? And I'm like, you can create your own podcast. You don't have to wait to be on other people's podcasts. You can create your own newsletter. You can go and do a conference talk. You can build out your own side gig. You can do whatever the heck you want. And I'm a huge fan of other PMMs owning their lives, and especially just people who feel like they've been imposter syndromes for so long, where us as PMMs, we feel that way because we work across so many different teams and everyone's telling us we're doing a bad job. When actually, I feel like we are like the linchpin. We're so required. We hold everything together. I really do think that. I just feel like we've been gaslit to believe that we don't have the power. When actually, Senda, we have the power. Like, look at you, for example. You have your own podcast, and this is so exciting. And yeah, I just feel like you're paving the way as well.
Thank you so much for saying that. By the way, I'm definitely sharing that snippet on social, like what you said about. I think I heard this from you saying that PMMs are only hired when things are going wrong. It's so true. Like we're expected to be the fixers, and it's almost like it's in our nature to feel imposter syndrome, and it's a sad reality. And to me, for example, doing these things on the side, it's a way outside of work to find something I'm passionate about and to connect with people in the community I find very valuable to me. And so that's why I'm happy that you're starting your own community as well, so that I'm going to be learning from it as much as I can. And so based on that, I would love to know something you said or posted about product marketers being seen as order takers versus strategic leaders. I want to dive into this because I get what it means, but I just want to know why you said it and what it means for you.
So what it means for me is a lot of the time we want to do good in our jobs. It makes sense. We want to help other people that we work with across sales, CS, product, marketing, etc. So for some PMMs, and here's how I sort of failed in the start of my career, well, I was very much a people pleaser. I was like, in order for them to like me, I need to do what they say and be reactive and just do, give them the thing and just like be like, okay, here you go. So if they ask me for like, hey, I'm about to close this large enterprise organization within a salesperson, and they said that, and they were like, I need a sales deck in order to close them. Can you please do me a custom one? I would have been like, okay, yeah, of course. Like it's worth like potentially 1 million ARR, blah, blah, blah. Of course. Yeah, of course I'll do that. So I'd park everything. I'd do it. I'd give it to them. And then I'd recognize that another salesperson will come the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. And then it would go rampant to a point where I was no longer doing the work that actually moved the needle, but I was doing these ad hoc little bits in order to be liked by other people. So I was an order taker, which by proxy meant that they didn't respect me. I had no authority, and I was just doing busy fucking work. I was doing nothing that actually my manager had told me or was linked up to the wider objectives. And I was not doing the solid work that I could put on my portfolio, on my CV, and make sure that I was building up in terms of a skill set. So I was actually doing more work, not being respected, and also potentially being more laid off because I was just seen as a slide deck person or a tactical person and not someone who was a strategic thinker. So then when I think about, okay, well, how did I turn myself and my career from like doing the stuff to then being like, okay, how do I build in boundaries? How do I start to say no or say like it'll be on the backlog? How do I then make sure that I work on the projects that will actually not only satisfy and build up new ARR or product adoption or whatever the goal is for the company, but also make sure that it was in line with skill sets that I wanted to learn, that I wanted to get better at, and also I wanted to be known for internally. So then when it came down to the real movements, the big shifts internally in terms of making more ARR or reducing churn or whatever, then I was working on the projects that were more aligned to it, not doing these ad hoc little tasks that people would throw my way, right? So then I was noticing that I was seen as more of an authority figure. I had fucking influence, man, like I really did. And I was seen as someone who was a linchpin, a person internally that they could go to that had respect. And also they started to see the wider product marketing function as more important because of how I was conducting myself. So then when new PMMs were being hired, when a new manager for product marketing was brought in, they were seen as like they were so respected because I had done the legwork. I had done the work instead of turning from like doing the task to then doing the strategic task, the task that I knew would move the needle, and that I would be able to explain in a very assertive way why things were being put on the backlog for now, and making sure that I was still maintaining a reputation and a good relationship with people I was saying no to, so they still like me. Because one of the things that I try and do throughout my career is not burn any bridges. So even if someone disagrees with me or debates with me or whatever, I'm like, it's purely professional, dude. And yet I know that if they go into a large enterprise organization, they want to bring me with them, I knew that that would always be an option, right? So that's how personal branding internally has that effect, Senda. It's like turning you from a person who just does the task to then becoming an actual leader that C-suite recognize, and they're like, she has the traits of a CMO, of a leader, of someone on our level. She's not just a doer little like lab rat. She just actually gets it. She's an IC, so I was an individual contributor. Equally, I had the mannerisms of someone who is way higher up than someone who was on my level. For example, this is why I tell everyone they should do improv comedy. I do improv comedy. I take courses and also I perform now. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's so cool. And here's the thing. I recommend everyone do it is because that's how I've got the reps in outside of work. So for example, when a private equity firm is on the call and they're like, Hattie, tell us about the ICP. Where are they based? What is their LTV? What is their CAC? How many demos did we get last month? How many leads, was off the back of that? Blah, blah, blah. And they just asked me all these questions. I was stuck. I was like, oh my God, what do I say? And what improv comedy did was it gave me the reps outside of work to practice. It put me under high pressure situation to then practice those communication skills outside of work. So then when it came down to being in those high pressure environments, while I'm being interrogated with these level of really in-depth questions, I had the fucking answers, man. I would just pull them out. Or if I didn't, I would be able to communicate in a way that would say, hey, I don't have that answer right now, but I will get back to you in this time frame with this answer. Is email best for you? Okay, awesome. I will get that over to you ASAP. So then I knew how to communicate without like unloading myself with all this pressure. And I think it's a case of, how do you build yourself up to be considered one of the leadership, even though you're not, but they see you in the same light, whilst equally doing very, very, very good work?
Well, I think the part about, the story you said about the slide decks, I am sure people listening to this the story will resonate with them 100%. Like if you've been a PMM, you've been through that experience. It's not the best dealing with, especially when you're dealing with like 20 SDRs and you're the only PMM out there, it's very tough. So what is one thing that PMMs can start doing today to shift towards that strategic / leadership approach rather than an order taker?
One thing that I did was I took an audit internally. So I took an audit of who really vouches for me, who is my champion, who are the people that there's room for improvement with, and who are the people who really just don't like me. They were usually in the sales team, let's be real. And I then, off the back of that, I started to implement a plan, which was, okay, how do I keep the champions constantly championing me? And also the second one was, how do I make sure that I start to rebuild these relationships with these people and make sure that I was like aligned with their goals? So I wanted to understand more about them. I would have one-to-ones with them. I would reach out to them, but not in a needy way. It was a case of like me trying to position it as, I want to learn more about you so then I can help you. And then when I'm on the call, I'll highlight, here's how I can help you, but here is how you help me in turn so that I can do this very good work. And I would make it a very transactional sort of conversation, but they would get it because it's professional, right? So it's like, hey, if you want me to create very good slide decks that would really hit the mark, you need to provide me with the customer interviews. I need to speak to the customers who are under your accounts. How do we get that set up? How do we make sure that I get at least 5 a month on a recurring basis? What can we do together to enhance that? And therefore it became a conversation which was like, they started to be like, oh, wow, that's a really good question. And then they start to think, oh, Hattie really knows her stuff, because they're not thinking about the stuff that I'm thinking about, which is like, what are the processes? What are the steps? You know, us PMMs, we think about, well, all the individual steps that go into this. When someone's like, oh, we need 10 more case studies. It's like, dude, it's not as simple as just being like, we need 10 more case studies. You know, we need to figure out who's the right ones, who are the ones who are like still, they're not about to churn. Like, can we get them on the call? What are the people internally we want to make sure are in that case study, et cetera, et cetera. So then highlighting the full process and the context around it was the way that I could rebuild those relationships. So I would recommend every PMM, even if everything is good right now, because I feel like there is always room for improvement, always, with people, especially with new starters, new higher ups, and especially if like either your company has been acquired recently or there's been new management put in place. Sometimes here's the scary bit. It's when new managers come in and they want to bring in the old people that they've worked with, and they want to just gut the place and bring in everyone that they've worked with in the past. Then it's a case of, how do you really get on that manager's side, on the good books, right? So then they recognize that you're on their team. And one thing that I like to share, and is a lesson that I share in productmarketers.com, is aligned incentives. If you figure out what the incentives are for that person that you're speaking to, whether it's on LinkedIn, like a recruiter, or whether it's someone that you work with internally, like a manager or a new manager, if you figure out what their incentives are, you align everything that you do to their incentives, and they will like you and they will bring you wherever they go.
Incentives. Interesting. Do you have any tips on like figuring out what those incentives are? Like any questions or any ways to get through the person?
Yeah, so either it depends on who you're asking, but when I've worked with people who are on my level, like my colleagues, I will straight up be like, hey, do you have any KPIs or OKRs that you're set for the month? Or if they're a salesperson, hey, do you have any like revenue goals that you've been set for the month that you need to hit? Or if they're in customer support, are you marked on like the number of tickets that you solve in a month, or like what are you measured against? And then I would figure out, okay, once they tell me that, I would really make a note of it in my notes app and be like, okay, well, that's what they are measured against. So how can I help them hit that goal? And the minute I can start to align my projects and what I'm doing to hit that goal, then firstly, it reduces all of the fluff crap out of my plate, but also it gets them to be like, I fucking love Hattie, and therefore we cannot lose her. And then it's the people who higher up. So for example, a manager, I am not going to ask a new manager what their goal is. Like, let's be real. But I'm going to assume that, let's say it's like, okay, they've been given maybe 3 months to 6 months probation. Maybe they've given a specific revenue target that they need to hit. Maybe they've been told to cut costs. Maybe they've been told to really go hard on a new regional area or whatever. And there was some times where, because I really trusted the CEO that I worked with, there was a time where I would ask him about, like, if he was mentioning, oh, we're going to hire a new CMO, I would ask him, okay, well, what are the goals that you have set for the CMO? And then that way I can start to learn without going directly to the CMO, if you know what I mean. Right. And then I can align everything that I'm doing and saying towards that, which is like, if I know that the goal is to make more ARR, then I'll only speak about the projects that are ARR related to that CMO. I'm not going to speak about churn related projects, because they'd be like, oh, Hattie's wasting her time. Like in their heads, they'd be thinking, Hattie's fucking wasting her time because she's working on stuff that isn't related to the wider goals. When actually, if I make sure that I really understand what they are focused on, I can just speak to them in the way that they want to receive it, which, to be fair, is a messaging play. Like this is what messaging is. It's just understanding how they want to consume the information and what their value is and the pain points, and me speaking to that.
Use their pain points against them. No, just kidding. Definitely, it's a good way to look at it. There you go. We're kind of applying a framework here, Hattie. We have to be careful, but it's true.
No, it's not a framework. It's not a framework.
Okay, I have one final question for you, and this is about something you said earlier, which I want to go back to. You said that you were an IC, but you developed the skills or the mannerism of someone who could be of a CMO, literally. That's what you said. So I want to know, in your view, what is the key skill that can really take a PMM from, just someone who executes all the time to being more of a leader and potentially be seen as a strong candidate for a CMO?
Here's how I have got to this place, is because I personally have done the therapy and I've done the work in terms of hiring the coaches that I needed to do, and I needed to help me to break out of my shell. Because believe it or not, I was so shy. Like, if you can ask all of my family members, I was so shy up until maybe the age of 21. I was like the quiet one, the one who read, who was just like listening. And I was so insular. So then in my 20s, I really started to build a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of shyness. And I really didn't know how to break through it. And I'd recognized that I had a lot of like baggage that came from childhood that I really need to address through therapy, through giving myself self-compassion, to starting to like allow myself to be who I'm authentically am within this planet. And then it allowed me, once I had broken through all of this like triggers and traumas and all this baggage, it allowed me to then work on the skill set, which was communication. Because I had gone from absolutely shy, not being able to communicate, shaking whenever I did a talk, especially at university, to now being like, throw me on any stage, I have got this, dude, like absolutely got this. And communication is key. After you've done the work, after you've addressed the stuff, communication is the one thing that will catapult you. And here's how I know this, and Sender, you probably do too, is because we've all worked with someone who's absolutely they don't know how to do their job. They don't, but they talk a good game. And they are able to like either move up in the ranks or they have stayed during tech layoffs. And I saw this with my own two eyes throughout my career, where the people who talk the loudest and know how to rally people together and kind of create like a movement, a little bit of a, let's get ready behind this feature. And they literally do nothing towards it. They stay. It's because they are able to communicate to a level in which is admirable by the private equity firm, which is admirable by the investors, which is admirable by the customers, because they can speak with gusto. They can speak in like a negotiating, persuasive power that actually has a lot of value. Now, imagine if you pair up acing communication with actually being a very, very strong IC. That was the combination that I had, which was absolutely killer. And that's why I was like, there are 5 rounds of layoffs and I'm 99% certain that I am going to be here, even if there's a 6th and the 7th and the 8th or whatever. Communication is the level of which, like, if you see all, and here's how I perceived it. It was like, let me break down what I'm seeing ahead of me. The CEOs, the CMOs, the VPs, the directors of. All they do is they are really, really good at taking a very, very high, like big project or big sort of ask from the investors or from the CEO. And then they break that down into manageable tasks for their teams beneath them to actually execute on. If they didn't have the very good communication power to get people behind them, to get them rallied up, to get them motivated, there is no way they would hit those goals. So if I'm just trying to speed up years, instead of doing what I could do in 5 years and wait and improve communication slowly by just like ad hoc doing it, if I can be actually proactive and go after it and take it into my own hands, then I can speed that process up from 5 years to a year, and also take those skill sets wherever I go in whatever company. So if you're thinking, how do I take myself from a PMM who's just being given tasks to now starting to think about where I want to be, and I want to be on the CMO level, or the VP level, or the director of PMM level, and maybe you're like mid into your career, maybe you're 10 years in and no one's promoting you, or they were like, oh, you're okay, like you're doing good work.
To me, the biggest takeaway, I mean, so something also I applied is to be proactive. If something feels like, if it feels wrong, it's wrong. So get out. And it's also what I was telling you, I'm going through a big shift currently because I just quit my job because I felt like I wasn't being rewarded for the value I was bringing. And it's very tough to put yourself in, a situation where you're not comfortable anymore. It's scary, as you said, and I'm not sure, but I'm betting everything on my next manager. And I think it's a mix of being assertive and, as you said, building your influence, but also having the right people around you to support you in your growth. I think that's really important. And unfortunately, usually you figure that out once you're in the job. A bit late for some, but for others, I think, I what you just said really resonates with me because I'm literally going through that right now. So wish me luck, Hattie.
Oh no, you've got this. You've got this. And I think
know.
what you're doing is like, share your journey, because I'm sure that other people would love to like follow along and learn, because you're able to start afresh. You're able to be someone completely different if you wanted, in a way. Because here's the thing, like that guy, he could have done like what you're about to do and what you're doing. So I'm super excited about your journey. Like I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm going to like stay tuned.
No, thank you so much. And also thank you for doing this with me. I loved hearing you live. It's a different experience than listening to your podcast with someone else. So I'm glad we did this together. And I can't wait to see where product marketers go. Also, I think that's going to be a huge thing this year for you. So congrats on the launch. And to everyone listening, make sure you check it out and subscribe to Hattie's newsletter and to Hattie's everything. If you want to share any resources with us, Hattie, I'll let you share those.
Yeah, so if you want to follow me along, I'm Hattie the PMM on LinkedIn and on YouTube, where I provide free content. I have productmarketers.com, where I help PMMs like you build your internal personal brand and your external personal brand, or either one, depending on what your goal is for this year. So please join us. We're so supportive, and it's like nice to see us kicking off in the community. It's just so heartwarming. So please do check it out. And yeah, I just hope to see you around. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.